Hello and welcome. It is another rousing edition of the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. I'm Matt Michaels. Hello to you, Brad Trinago.
Hello to you, Matt. It's a good time to be coming on to talk about Mizzou Athletics. You got ranked teams getting knocked off all over the place by the black and gold. You got some buzzer beaters. You've got some weekly honors. And for our friends on the spring sports side, they're just getting ready to go here. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Business has picked up, so we will get you in tune with all of that after we tell you about our friends at Shelter Insurance, who power the pod. Ranked number one in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power. 6 of the last 7 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter. And Tiger fans say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like Huli Huli Chicken, Luau Pig, and the delectable Dole Soft Serve. Hawaiian Bros is just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order online at hawaiianbros.com. We have our guest this week, someone who has been wearing black and gold his entire life. Once upon a time as a Hornet out of St. Elizabeth, Mo. Now as a Missouri Tiger on the Tiger baseball team, which is getting ready for its first pitch celebration on Saturday and its first pitch of the season in like 16 days. And Brock Lucas will be throwing some of those pitches, and he joins us now on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast. Brock, thanks for being here. We appreciate it, and happy spring to you. Even though it's February, we have to count it as spring.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, when you were growing up, small town, kind of a farm vibe, was it ever in your mind that something like being a pitcher at the University of Missouri would be in your future? Was there ever a time when you were growing up saying, man, this is where I know it's going to be?
Yeah, I would say that was always a dream. I'd say ever since I picked up a baseball and a bat, like I'd always wanted to play at Mizzou, whether it was baseball or basketball. I'd always knew that I wanted to come here and play a sport.
St. Elizabeth High School had a lot of success there, state champ in baseball, made a Final Four all 4 years, I believe, in basketball. What was the biggest adjustment for you going from small-town high school ball to the SEC, the biggest and baddest in college baseball?
Yeah, I'd say it's the level of confidence. You have to learn to believe in yourself and know that you've put in the work and you belong there, especially coming from a smaller town, like playing the kids that I would play versus like playing the bodies of the guys that I play now. Like it was such a big difference, and just reminding yourself that you've done that and you can do it, and just believing in yourself.
So much about the game of baseball is a mental game, and it sounds to me like you're describing the mental work you have to do before you ever step foot between the white lines to be successful, not just, as people would say, in the SEC, but just to be out there against athletes who want to have that same mindset and want to be able to be better than you every time. How do you keep yourself mentally sharp and able to do that? Is it just something you grow over time, or is it something you have to constantly train for yourself?
Yeah, I think for me it's something that grew. My freshman year, I didn't necessarily have that belief. I was just kind of going out there and doing it. Last year, I think Coach Jameson kind of really helped instill like that belief and the confidence in yourself, and just like once you get on the mound, not thinking about it, like you're out there, you put in the work, and just going right at it. So and now I'd say it's just something that kind of is right there with me in everything that I do.
Let's go back a little bit, because you mentioned the work. The hard work wouldn't be a problem. You grew up basically on the farm. What was that like as a childhood, being around that sort of lifestyle, and what do you carry from that as you still work here in college baseball?
Yeah, when I talk to people about St. Elizabeth, they're like, oh, like what's the nearest grocery store? What's the nearest this or that? And I'm like, well, grocery store is probably 30 minutes away in Jeff City. So just growing up in that, just seeing like the hard work that goes into it. People have their farms, they plant their gardens, like people try to grow and produce as much as they can back home. And I think that like growing up and seeing that for 18 years just kind of stays with me now that I'm here. And the ease of access of everything here is a little easier than it is back home.
10 minutes is better than 30 minutes to drive and get yourself something?
Yeah, I'd say so.
You mentioned it being a dream to compete at this level. Do you also feel almost a little bit of a weight on your shoulders, just in terms of being someone who can prove, hey, you can be a small town kid from Missouri and you can compete against the best that come from the South and from the bigger cities and places like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a weight on my shoulders. I'd say more of a chip on my shoulder. going out there and proving myself and, proving that you don't have to be from a big city or play at a big school to go out and compete against the best in the country.
How have skills you learned on the basketball court in high school translated to baseball at a higher level? Have you seen any parallels there? Do you draw on that sometimes?
I think, growing up, in high school, I was the point guard, and, you kind of have to run the offense and control the pace of the game. And I think, playing in the 4 Final Fours, playing in the bigger game, like the biggest games that I could play I think that just kind of helps me slow down my process when I'm on the mound and things are kind of getting, quick on me. They're getting hits, giving up walks. Like, I can go through and kind of slow myself down and, just stay grounded.
Is that a mental process in terms of breaking things down step by step? Or is that more taking it all in and not letting it be bigger than the thing that you're doing at any one moment?
Yeah, I'd say it's more the taking it all in and not letting it be bigger than what it is, and reminding myself how grateful I am to be out there. For me, I have kind of just mental cues that I go through, whether it's just take a step back and just take a real deep breath and kind of let it out and just remind yourself where you are and how lucky you are to be there.
Had a really solid sophomore season this past year. You went 4-0 in a relief role. What have you been working on to grow on the mound heading into your junior year?
Yeah, did some pitch designing with my slider and, hopefully stepping into more of a starter role and being able to go through an order 2-3 times just to give my team the best chance to win.
When you say pitch design, explain to people who may not understand what that process is or what you're trying to accomplish, the way you go about designing or tweaking a pitch in your arsenal.
Yeah, so for my slider, we would use data called TrackMan. Pretty much it shows you how much your pitch is moving and what it looks like when it is moving. And just kind of using that pretty much for my slider to make it move more, I guess is the best way to put it. So whether that's tweaking the grip or the wrist angle, anything like that, it goes a long ways when it comes to making a pitch move.
How do you make something like a wrist angle repeatable? Just doing it 1,000 times?
Yeah, I'd say for me, I'm more of like a feel guy. So going through the fields, playing catch with it every day, and just trying to repeat. When I see it good, try to repeat that feel.
Tiger fans, say aloha to Hawaiian Bros, where the island-inspired flavors are positively delicious. You'll love favorites like huli huli chicken, luau pig, and the delectable Dole soft serve. Hawaiian Bros, just south of campus on Grindstone Parkway, or order at hawaiianbros.com.
I want to go back to March 12th of last season at Kansas, 5-4 final in 10 innings. You were the winning pitcher. You helped shut down a rally in the 8th with the score tied, navigated the 9th unscathed too. What was your favorite memory from that day in Lawrence?
Beating Kansas is always the best. I've grown up quite the hatred for those guys over there. So, just the fact that I could pitch against Kansas, growing up, never liking them, and then being able to pitch against them, and then let alone get the win, I think that's just it wasn't necessarily a dream come true, but it just felt really good in the heart.
Do you guys understand as a team that the fact that you wear 3 letters on your shoulder that say SEC means that other teams are looking at you as the type of team to knock off, and not just necessarily when you're playing on the weekend, but when you're playing games like Kansas and Illinois and SEMO and name it throughout the course of the season?
Yeah, we know the SEC puts a target on our back, and you just have to treat every game like you're playing against yourself, not the other team. And so no matter who's in the other dugout, you're trying to go out and play the best baseball you can.
If we're talking about specific games, I think about one that you came into that maybe started a little up and down your freshman season at Lindenwood, and it got you your first career win in relief. How are you a different, a better, a more mature pitcher now than you were when you were on that field in St. Charles getting your first collegiate win?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it's mental. Like I said earlier, the belief in yourself, and I would say the skill that I've developed in just pitch execution, I think it's grown quite a bit since my freshman year. And so, I think that goes right along with confidence and belief in yourself. So I think the two of those go hand in hand.
And then talking about SEC games, May 18th of last year at Mississippi State, you were able to pick up a save. How fun was that to, compete and succeed in one of the, most hostile and most elite venues in college baseball?
Yeah, I like going on the road. I like pitching in front of the other crowds. I like seeing the new stadiums. And so, getting that win, where those guys were in their year, where we were in our year, I think it was a good way for us to end on kind of a high note, especially being the one and only road conference win that we had. I think it felt good, and it kind of sent a little better send-off for our seniors.
Yeah, and, I think it says something, too, that you had that moment at the end of the season, and in this era where everybody basically chooses every year where they want to play, so much of the core of that team has returned. The seniors and some others have departed, but you bring back guys like yourself. I mean, I think of Ian Losey, Tony Newbeck, who's working back from injury. Everybody has a choice. What is it about the core of your team that's made you choose to stay here and make this the place where you all want to play together?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's just growing up a Mizzou fan. Like, I want to be a part of the reason why Mizzou Baseball turned it around and started winning and started going to regionals, started seeing success as a program. And so I think that's with all of our returners. Like, we want to be the team that turns it around. And so I think having that kind of chip on our shoulders kind of motivated us quite a bit throughout this offseason.
Mentioned Tim Jamison, back as an assistant coach under Carrick Jackson, someone who's been around the block a time or 10. What's it been like to be able to learn from him as you continue to grow your repertoire as a pitcher?
Yeah, learning from Coach Jay is pretty fun. I like to go just sit in his office and kind of pick his brain from now and time again. But he's really big on like the mental side of like the belief in yourself and attacking the hitters. It doesn't matter who's in the box, just keep attacking. And so I think kind of pitching with that mindset has kind of helped me grow quite a bit as a pitcher, not necessarily chasing strikeouts, but just chasing outs.
Is there a part of you guys as a pitching staff that says we cannot focus on the external, and almost you can't focus on the result so much as you have to on that process and on that belief? Is there an element of it where the trust has to lead to the result rather than just hoping for the result to happen?
I think the trust comes in through pitch execution, kind of attacking with the first pitch. Every pitcher would rather be pitching an 0-1 rather than 1-0. Mm-hmm. And so getting that first pitch down and then attacking, realistically trying to get a hitter out in 3 pitches or less, I think is a really good goal for a pitcher. And so just having the attack mindset and going after each hitter no matter who it is.
You guys have an opportunity this season to once again as a team play one of the most difficult schedules you'll find anywhere, just by the virtue of being a team in the Southeastern Conference. But also you get these road series against these top 10 preseason ranked teams. How do you turn that into mentally for yourself as a group, the opportunity that it is, rather than looking at it as a challenge that some may want to present it as?
Yeah, I'd say as, with this team especially, we kind of taking things one game at a time, one practice at a time, one day at a time, and kind of viewing everything as an opportunity. Remind ourselves like how grateful we are to be here, and not looking too far into the future or looking behind us. Say we lose a game, we're not going to look back at that. We're going to keep game to game, and I think we haven't made a regional since 2012, and I think the more tests and challenges we get is going to be the better for us when it comes May.
About 2 weeks away from the start of the season, and that's going to be Puerto Rico. Trip to Puerto Rico for you guys in February. First of all, I'm jealous. Second of all, are you looking forward to that trip a little bit more than a bus ride to Pilot Grove or Webelow High School or something like that from back in your high school days?
Yeah, I would say I'd say the travel day probably won't be very fun. I'd probably wish I was riding a bus to Pilot Grove, but no, I'm really looking forward to it and kind of kicking things off, and it's always nice to play baseball in warm weather.
All right, so people have this idea of pitchers as sometimes the class clowns, right? If you had to pick one person who was the class clown out of your staff, who is it?
Josh McDevitt.
Why is it McDevitt?
Without a question. He's always cracking jokes or poking at somebody. I mean, he keeps it very lighthearted for sure.
Yeah. So I presume that there's someone out there who wants to try to one-up him every once in a while, right?
I mean, Daniel Whistler he'll throw in. He gets his fair amount of jokes in as well, and so there's quite a few clowns on the pitching staff.
Hey, you know what? As long as you're not clowning when you go out there, you got like that mean mug or something going on the mound. Do you have a mound mean mug? I don't think I've seen it.
No, I'm usually pretty steady Eddie on the mound. I don't try to show too much emotion unless get a big strikeout or big out in a situation.
Yeah, until you strike someone out. How do you feel about that as a pitcher? People talk about how baseball is played and showing emotion, and do you do it here? Do you not? It seems to be so much more of an individual thing, and especially in the college game. I mean, you're going to have your share of a bat flip against you when someone does something well. You're going to shout when you get a strikeout. How do you feel about that as an individual?
Personally, it doesn't really bother me. Like, if you hit a home run off me and you want a bat flip, I don't care. I think it's good for the game that people show emotion, because when you look at the MLB, usually everyone's favorite players are the guys bat flipping or, celebrating, and I think it's good for the game of baseball.
All right. Let's say that you, Brock, have nothing to do on a certain day, and you want to do anything you want here in Como. Where are you going? What are you doing?
I would probably go out to Old Hawthorne and play a round of golf.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say that's a no-brainer for me.
You keep your handicap?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so what's the handicap?
Right now it's at a 8 handicap. So.
Okay. I will not share my handicap. I keep it 2. I'll tell you off the air. As you go into what is going to be, I know, a really exciting season for you and your team, what would success look like for your team, and what would success, Brock, look like for you once this ride is done this year?
Yeah, I'd say success as a team, obviously making a regional, like kind of getting over that hump. But I think when you boil it down, just like our acronym we have as a team is now, no opportunities wasted. And I think for us as a team, every day is an opportunity, every practice is an opportunity, and not wasting those days, because the practices now mean just as much as the games do in May. And so I think that as a team, just building off each day and growing, obviously you want to play your best baseball in May. And so just kind of going at it step by step every day, I think would be the best for us.
The ride begins on Valentine's Day with, yes, a long travel day before then, but not too bad to say a Valentine's Day in paradise in Puerto Rico is the start for Mizzou Baseball, and then on through the season, Hoover and beyond. We're looking forward to it, and Brock Lucas, Tiger Junior pitcher, with us here on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast to give us a little bit of a snapshot into how it's going. Brock, we appreciate the time. Glad to have you on here, and we wish you and your teammates the best as you go into the season.
Thank you. MIZ.
ZOU. That's Brock Lucas. Brad and I will be back to catch you up on all the things going on with Mizzou Athletics. But first, you should hear from our friends at Shelter Insurance.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Shelter Insurance. Ranked number 1 in customer satisfaction for auto insurance in the Central Region by J.D. Power 5 out of the last 6 years. We're your shield. We're your shelter.
Here in 3, 2, 1. Oh, you were expecting someone else out of our timeout. Oh, all right. I will talk about that with Mr. Brad Trinago after I remind you that Socket Fiber is now available. The fastest, most reliable internet combined with local service and simple billing. Contact Socket today for voice data and internet services for your home and business. 1-800-SOCKET-3 or visit socket.net. And Sophia's and Addison's restaurants are great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, the famous Nachos Biancos. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's. Brad Trinago stopped by Addison's for a celebratory beverage or 2 after that call of Mizzou's last second, truly last moment, buzzer-beating win over Mississippi State in women's hoops just on Monday night. It is still fresh. I still hear the hoarseness of your voice, sir.
There's a little bit in there, yeah. Great game, and for a team that had gone 375 days since its last SEC win, certainly felt sweet to get over that hump against the team that typically plays in the hump, but this game was in Columbia. But anyway, Grace Slaughter was terrific, finished with a career-high 31 points and none bigger than that basket at the end. And it just, right from the start, the energy level against a quality team in Mississippi State. That was a team that was number 31 in the net. So that's a high-level win to be able to compete just right from the start and, face some adversity throughout. They've got a lot of talent. Jerkayla Jordan scored 40 points for them. I mean, she's a really good player, veteran guard who was all SEC a year ago. And they threw punches, and Mizzou was able to respond, got down as much as 9 at one point in the second half, but continued to compete, kept hanging in there, got a big shot before that from Abby Schreck to get within 1, and then obviously, Slaughter finishes it off, but that doesn't happen if Lanaya Randall doesn't poke the ball away to her to set up that opportunity. So, yeah, just a great moment all around, easily the best win of the season.
Well, and I kind of look at the box score and look at it another way, too. Missouri has had its moments where, you've had these big surges of offense, and then the other team, it's kind of been like games of runs, even in some of these downfalls during the stretch. And in this case, you kind of played a more nip-and-tuck game with Mississippi State throughout, and part of it was because you had Star going with Star, but also State only rolls like 6 deep in terms of their minutes. They don't play a lot in rotation, and you look at Missouri's minutes, and you get contributions from more players in different places. And sometimes that's hard for a team to maintain that sort of nip and tuck when you are substituting in and you're trying to get fresh legs. So I credit the team effort of being able to stick around with, like you said, basically a top 30 team and put yourself in position even at the end to make the sorts of plays that win you ball games, which 2 of them there between Randall and Slaughter were the sorts of special plays that you need sometimes in the SEC.
Yeah, you certainly do. And ball security was also a big thing there. Only 10 turnovers against any SEC opponent is something that's always going to pop out. So you're giving yourself opportunities. Possessions, the vast majority of the possessions in that game ended with at least a shot attempt. And that can be a win, honestly, against some of these SEC defenses. And then in terms of rebounding, too, yeah, finished -7 on the glass, which is not ideal, but this is a Mississippi State team that on average is +10 on the boards. They're like top 10, top 20 in the country in that department. They rolled out 6'6", 6'5", and some pretty good athletes that weren't quite that tall either. And it was just consistently competing on the glass, which has been a challenge at times against some of the opponents that we've seen so far in the conference. So just a really fun moment overall. Was really happy for Slaughter. It's a young lady who, I mean, she's 6'2", and she's got almost like a Kevin Durant type release, which is way above her head. So it's a shot that's very difficult to block, especially if you're a typical guard who rolls out there at 5'8", 5'9". And so it's been nice to see, and the coaches have said too that she needs to be more assertive. She needs to expand her definition of open. When you're at her level and you have her ability to score at multiple levels, you're open at times where maybe even some of her teammates and the typical player is not actually open. Just shoot that thing more, man. And she did that last night, and she had the confidence at the end with the ball in her hands. I'm going to be the one to take this shot and win this game, and she was able to deliver. Pretty good stuff.
So, again, a drought, as Brad so artfully enunciated several times, is over. And now the SEC serves you 5th-ranked Texas on the road. We don't know the result at the time we're recording this. You may hear this before the game happens. It's the later start on Thursday night. And then Sunday back at home against 18th-ranked Tennessee. With their head coach presumably in tow and on the floor after having a child. And then LSU on the road on Thursday, February the 6th. So, again, they give you no mercy in the Southeastern Conference, but a win to build upon. And as we've said several times here on the podcast, you see it all the time in college sports. One win can beget 2 and 3 very quickly. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, obviously a challenging stretch. So those are 3 teams that are legit, at least Sweet 16 contenders. I think Texas, if they, they're not a team that shoots the 3 hardly at all, but everything else Vic Schaefer's team brings to the table. They're tremendous defensively. They're enormous. Madison Booker's one of the best players in the country. Rory Harmon is one of the few people with a better assist-to-turnover ratio than Mizzou's Avery Kroenke does. So a really talented team. Final Four capable. I think it might be dependent on what their bracket looks like. in their NCAA tournament run, but they do have the ability to get there. Tennessee, under new management, you mentioned Kim Caldwell, had a child a week later back on the sidelines for a game on Monday night against South Carolina. So presumably she will be here for this matchup coming up. Pretty remarkable there. And if you go back to the replay of Tiger Talk, which is available now on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast feed, Robin Pinchton went through this too, and she was actually back in the office the next day after having her first child. So I mean, it's just they're built of tougher stuff than I am. We'll certainly say that. LSU, obviously national champion 2 years ago, Elite Eight the year before. So that's the stretch you're looking at with a really talented group of teams there. It's the SEC. It is what it is. But no matter what happens, that moment against Mississippi State showed that this team, they haven't let go of the rope. And that's something you can kind of worry about when you have a few losses pile up there. Are you still in it? Are you still in the fight? And this team showed, yes, very much so, still in the fight.
And the men's team will look to make it more sadness in the Magnolia State when they head down to the hump on Saturday, and we can talk about that in a little bit. They got the first half of that two-step. I want to call it Steel Magnolias because the Tigers took 13 times the ball away from Ole Miss. 12 of them were steals when they won 83-75 at home this past Saturday, and that was a game in which, aside from going down on an 8-0 run by the opponents to start the game, Missouri answered with a 12-0 run, 10 of which were Tamar Bates points. He was a monster in that contest. And then everything else fell into place, and it looked like basically every other home game Missouri has played this season, where they never really run away and hide, but they never really give the game away either. And they do what's necessary to win, and Missouri puts themselves, again, with another quad one win on the wall after beating a good Ole Miss team. They're good, and Missouri basically controlled that contest more or less from whistle to whistle.
Mizzou leads the SEC in steals, so Steel Magnolia, I'll second that. That's certainly in play. Well done by you on that. That was what stood out to me too. Ole Miss came out and basically played a perfect minute of basketball to begin the game. It was made shot, crazy block, another made shot. I mean, they were just all over the place. They jump out 8-0, and a couple minutes later of play, the lead was gone. And Mizzou, I don't even know if they trailed again after that start.
They did trail one time by, I think, a bucket.
Okay.
In like the aftermath, there were about 2 or 3 minutes, but it didn't feel like it. Everybody presumed that they had not trailed, but they did, and then they came right back and erased it. And from there, it was establishing an 8-point lead. Their largest lead was 12, established in the second half. In the second half, they never led by less than 3 points, so it's not like the game was particularly in doubt, and they had an answer for every shot they took.
That's against the top 25 team. I mean, Ole Miss, even after the loss against Mizzou, is still number 23 in the country. So you've put another quality win on your resume. I mean, you're as of after the weekend anyway. We don't know how the midweek stuff's going to play out, but after the weekend, Mizzou was third in the SEC. I mean, you've put yourself in position where you're not just talking about, okay, can we find a way into the NCAA tournament? You're talking about being in the mix for a double bye in the SEC tournament if you can finish up in the top 4. And from what we've seen from Mizzou already in conference play, I mean, the Ole Miss win certainly is one of the standouts, but the ability to go to a place like Florida and win, I mean, why not? Why can't they be a team that finishes top 4 in this league and put themselves in position to win what's going to be the toughest conference tournament in America? I mean, they've reset the bar multiple times, these Tigers have, and it's been really exciting.
I'm going to say something that might get a little bit of controversy, but I know friend of the podcast Jay Billis would agree with me. Did you hear how Jay Billis was getting all this trouble for going out there and saying that the SEC tournament might be harder to win than the NCAA tournament, especially for those teams who are starting on day one, teams 9 through 16 in the league who do not get any sort of bye. You're talking 5 games in 5 days, and even if you are a team with a double bye, you presumably are beating 3 top 25 teams on the way to getting an SEC championship. I don't think that this is novel for Jay Billis to be saying this, and I don't think he's necessarily completely correct, but in terms of what you have to do to accomplish the next step, which in this case is every day you're playing a new game, You get to play 2 games a weekend, and you get to prepare in a little bit of time beforehand, and then advance to the next weekend, and advance to the next weekend in the NCAA tournament. You get time off. You get no time off before another top 10, top 25 team is thrown at you in Nashville this season. In swimming and diving, have we not heard it before from Andrew Grievers that the SECs are probably harder to win than the NCAA championship is? For teams in a certain position, it's going to be nearly impossible, which is, to your point, when you mentioned, Brad, that Missouri is in a top 3 position right now, if you get the double bye, those are the 4 teams that are best positioned to not only win the whole thing in Nashville, but also not suffer a hangover when they go into the NCAA tournament, because with how physical this league has been and with how good you have to bring it every single night, they're going to be teams that have numbers next to their name that probably lose in the first or second round of the big dance just because they went through the gauntlet that is the Southeastern Conference and because of other factors in play there. I am not going to be naive in thinking that what Jay Billis, who's very good at this, said is not true. Like, I could see this as being a tougher thing to achieve for certain teams in this field than actually going all the way in the NCAA tournament because of how it stacks up.
You brought up an interesting point there. So for folks who may not be as familiar and are as into this, for their jobs like we are, with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma into the SEC, the conference basketball tournaments have changed to where it used to be only the bottom 4 teams in the conference would theoretically have to win 5 games in 5 days to win the conference championship. That's changed now to where the bottom 8 teams, so the bottom half of the conference, would have to go, 5 wins in 5 days to win the SEC. And from what we've seen, there's a very real possibility that there's going to be a team, at least one team, ranked in the top 25 that's going to have to play on that SEC tournament Wednesday and theoretically would have to win 5 games in 5 days to win their conference tournament title.
A top 25 national team will be the 9th seed in this conference. I believe that.
It seems that from what we've seen so far this year, where consistently we've seen 9 or even 10 teams from the SEC.
This week it's 10.
Yeah, so there you go. So, I mean, it seems like a very real possibility. So, again, like you said, the value of that double bye is you can avoid a couple of those potential landmines. And you only have to beat 3 top 25 teams in 3 consecutive days to win this conference.
Or maybe not even a top 25 team. I look at a team like Georgia right now that really struggled. They hung on against South Carolina over the weekend, didn't they?
Yeah,
at home?
Yeah, just barely.
So they're what,
legit.
3-5 in the league now?
Georgia's legit. I had a chance.
They're really good. You saw them.
Yeah, as part of our travel challenges a couple weeks ago with Mizzou women's basketball, we spent some extra time in Athens, and I watched them beat Kentucky. First of all, when they pack Stegman Coliseum, that's a pretty rowdy atmosphere. It's not a very big venue, and it can get pretty loud in there. And well, 2 things about Georgia that stood out was, one is that their team defense, whenever they're locked in, it's really difficult. Kentucky, which is a fabulous offensive team, had a really hard time generating any type of offense down in Athens against the Bulldogs, and that Asa Newell guy is legit. He's a heck of a player. I guess you would consider him a power forward, but he's just a do-it-all basketball player. He's a baller. The guy can do everything. And you're talking about, Georgia. That's a team that might finish like 12th or 13th in this league, and that's a legit good team. Mizzou has to go on the road there. That's going to be a really tough challenge, and you're talking about the 13th place team in the conference, maybe.
Yes.
This episode of Mizzou Storytellers on the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast is brought to you by Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants. Sophia's and Addison's Restaurants are great local spots to visit before or after all Mizzou home games. Addison's has 2 locations in Southwest and downtown Columbia and features over 20 beers on tap, including local brewers and, of course, their famous Nachos Bianco. So remember, before or after the game, stop by Addison's.
And maybe, as you look at it right now, some people would say number 13 in the SEC could be last in the field, which I still think is possible. Again, we said it weeks ago here on the podcast. Get to 8 wins in the league, and you should feel pretty good about yourself. Get to 9, you're in, and nobody can deny you. Well, guess what? Missouri's got 5 wins down, and they have 11 left to play. I like the opportunity to find at least 3 in the next 11, probably much more than that the way they've played, and they're going to have a chance to threaten for one of the spots that gives you the best chance to do both, not just play your way potentially to a semifinal and a championship in this tournament, but then take that and not get beat up in the NCAA tournament as well. And, oh, by the way, if you're in the championship game, of the SEC tournament this season, I don't care what team you are, you probably are on a top 5 or 6 line in the big dance, which to me is, I mean, unless it's someone coming from out of nowhere at the end of the season, I think that's what you would deserve if you were able to go through that gauntlet ever before you played a game. I mean, there are people, and I don't necessarily believe in this, but there are people who say from outside, especially when it comes to like the diamond sports and SEC tournaments, like, is there a value to not trying so hard to start? And then if you lose, you get to rest all your pitchers and you get to be... That's where the men's basketball tournament is this year. Some people being like, well, if we don't win, is it the worst thing in the world? We get extra time off. We don't have to beat ourselves up. We don't have to play these teams. People will be asking these questions in a month's time or so. I lock it in and mark it down. And it's just going to be so fascinating to see how it actually plays out as the whole season has been to this point. I mean, what's the average margin of victory in this league? Like 5 points? It's absurd.
Well, the record is 54-54, as some coaches outside.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Who got caught up by some internet trolls found out. But,
can't be very good. The record's 54-54 in the league.
Shout out to Rhode Island, by the way. Yeah. Thanks for if anybody from there is listening to the pod, appreciate you joining us there.
Thanks for the chuckles.
Math is hard sometimes. Speaking of math, some numbers. As of Wednesday morning, Mizzou at number 26 in the net, firmly in. They're number 1 in the nation in free throws made. Number 2 in free throws attempted. So they're middle of the pack in free throw percentage. Of course, you want to get better at that. Middle of the pack in rebounding margin, which is a huge improvement from last year. But this is a team that gets to the line. I mentioned they're one of the national leaders in steals, also in terms of bench scoring, thanks to Caleb Grill, who leads the nation among eligible players in a three-point percentage, just under 50% from deep. Tamar Bates is one of the best free throw shooters in the country. There's just a lot of good stuff going on with this team right now. They've made significant strides from last year's group, and we'll see how it plays out as the calendar turns to February before the Tigers play again.
I mean, if everything's coming up Tigers, you can look across the board as we sit here today and see a lot of good things in a lot of different places. One of them involves Helen who is still riding that Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast bump that we talk about so much, except that one of the judges on Saturday at home against Kentucky did not get the memo about the bump and gave her a 9.95 instead of a 10. She nearly was perfect again. It's another 9.975 for Helen. She's SEC Specialist of the Week for the second straight week on the beam. But maybe more importantly, Missouri, as a team, scored its first 197-plus score of the year in taking down 6th-ranked Kentucky in that Retro Cat Classic. That moved Missouri up a couple of spots in the rankings to 9th this week. Remember, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose against another team other than you position yourself to put a score higher than them as it goes along. So when it comes to this time of year where you start to look at how the NCAA qualifies and AQS and all the rest, that will be an important result for this team to say, we did the 197, we brought 4 events together, now let's make this repeatable and keep going. And by the way, you're going to need that sort of performance if you want to go on the road to LSU on Friday night and take care of business against another top 3 team in the nation.
It's a good point about the dynamics of gymnastics is that, yeah, you're competing against the other team that is there for a duel, and you'd like to have success against them. But really, you're just 2 teams that happen to be competing on the same night at the same time. I mean, if Mizzou would have gotten they got a 1.972. If they would have gotten a 1.976 and Kentucky would have gotten a 1.977 or something, it would have been better for Mizzou, if that makes sense, because you want the better team score. That's what it's all about, especially at this point. So, yeah, great showing, getting over 197 for the first time this year. Helen she's the only young lady in the country right now with a 10 on the beam at one point this season, and only 5 in the nation have at least a 9.975, and she's done it twice now, if you count the 10. So, I mean, she's put herself individually in a great position to cap off a remarkable story. Again, a young lady who took last year off to backpack around the country, and then she comes back, and she's maybe the number 1 beam specialist in America right now. Pretty cool thing to see, and she's one of the leaders of a Tiger team that once again is in position to be among those final 8, possibly, whenever the NCAA championships roll around.
Yeah, it's a 7:30 p.m. start down at the PMAC at LSU, and then Missouri will have Illinois on its own at Huff Hall in Champaign, and then Illinois with a couple others for the Zoo to the Lou meet at Family Arena in St. Louis. So those two will be coming up in the next couple of weeks, and a really good opportunity again for Mizzou Gymnastics to continue its ascent. Since we're talking about things that continue to be positive for Mizzou Athletics, before we talk about some of these programs individually, how about the news that just came out while we were recording the podcast on Wednesday morning from Audrey J. Walton, whose name is on the outdoor track and field and soccer stadium at the University of Missouri to begin with? Well, Audrey J. Walton has made another transformational gift that Mizzou says is a top 10 donation in the history of the athletic department and the largest dollar amount ever donated solely to benefit Olympic sports at the university. And what this gift will do is completely renovate the outdoor track surface. They'll have a new natural grass surface for the soccer playing field at Walton Soccer and Track and Field Stadium. It is something that has been needed for a while, and now stepping up with no timetable for completion is Mrs. Audrey J. Walton to say, we're going to get this done. Of great benefit for the University of Missouri and Mizzou Athletics and those programs, but also a great show of philanthropy in that Mizzou expects that this donation will cover the project, and they won't need to look for any more money anywhere else to get this done.
Yeah, pretty remarkable, and I guess congratulations to the track and field programs and the soccer team to have this kind of contribution, and really cool to see Audrey J. Walton's generosity in terms of this gift. And yeah, it just means a ton for these programs. The reality is that's what it, if you want to compete in the SEC, including in sports like track and field and women's soccer and all that, you've got to have some folks like an Audrey J. Walton that step up and help you out, and that's going to really be a big deal. And you wonder, too, what that could mean. I mean, we've seen, the new cross-country facility at Gans Creek is going to be hosting an NCAA championship here coming up pretty soon. Could that be something that not just helps the athletic department, but helps at a regional level, perhaps? That's something to keep an eye on down the road.
Well, also notice that Mizzou Track and Field has had the benefit of the new indoor track surface at Hearns Fieldhouse, new pitch, new everything, right? And already they're hosting 3 indoor weekends in a row. Those are the sorts of things that were not possible in this new era of college athletics that are now possible, that are happening, that should be happening at the University of Missouri. And this means good things, I know, down the road for the track and field and soccer program. So congratulations to them, and a big thank you to Mrs. Audrey J. Walton for that individual gift. And, oh, by the way, that gift was maybe paid off a little bit early because Sam Innes just won an SEC award for using that new indoor throw pit. Oh, and he only set the school's record for, the weight throw in indoor history. So that is a 75-foot, 4.75-inch throw, 2.98 meters if you live in Europe or Canada, which is beyond my scope of comprehension to think that I could throw that weight even 3 feet. So I congratulate Sam on being able to be really, really good at what he does and also set that mark in about the middle of the indoor season. It would seem that he would have places to go, which is pretty neat.
The track and field, in the SEC, no surprise, also really, really good. And so for some perspective on that, to get that weekly conference honor to be named the SEC Men's Field Athlete of the Week, Ennis is just the second ever Tiger man to win a conference indoor award. Ever. That's it. So, I mean, we've been in the SEC for a little while now.
A lot of them live in Fayetteville.
So it gives you some perspective on, to be able to be recognized, among the best in the SEC in any department when it comes to track and field. So congrats to Sam.
Yeah, very, very neat indeed. Since we're on the topic of both those programs, the soccer team put out its spring schedule. You get to see Missouri play Kansas in an exhibition in the spring. Something tells me that will be no exhibition.
You ever seen Rocky IV whenever Creed and Drago fight at the start? I won't spoil it for you, but it might be that type of exhibition. It could get pretty rough.
March 9th at 5 p.m., an exhibition against Kansas. Okay, sure. That's an exhibition. I would expect there to be many interested parties at that exhibition on March the 9th. Then Missouri S&T on March the 20th, and in April, Southern Indiana, Central Missouri. Those times are coming later, and they'll play at Nebraska on April 19th. So they have a very full spring schedule, but 6 of them at home, including an exhibition against Kansas, which is a really good idea.
And track and field, I'm not sure if we mentioned this already, but track and field is once again hosting this weekend. It's the Rick McGuire invite that's going to be coming up Friday and Saturday of this week.
Yeah, we had Bob Thiel so honored, and now Dr. Rick McGuire, the great Dr. Rick McGuire, will be so honored. And we'll be seeing so many track and field events that they will have to find more names to put out there. We'll have to go back to our pod that you can find way back in the past with John Anderson, who rattled off about 18 names to start with us of the greats of Mizzou track and field gone by, and then they can name a weekend after each one of them.
Maybe they could, yeah. Maybe and get the Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast bump in terms of having something named after you. That would be that's the next step.
That's the next thing
in the podcast bump. Yeah.
I do think so. Congratulations to Brady Cook. Not like he needs too many more, at least from people wearing black and gold. Everybody knows the story of Brady Cook, but he's also an academic All-America. He's a second-team academic All-America as named. And you want to talk about things that are pretty rare because, again, you're taking the whole country here in college football and doing it. He's the 22nd Tiger ever to earn an academic All-America, and he's the second consecutive recipient of the award from Missouri. Darius Robinson was on the first team last season. You want to think about how hard that is to do? It's still student-athlete, despite the fact that there's money going on all kinds of places. You still have class. You still have to go. You still need to make the grade, and Brady Cook did it at a level highest among peers this season. So congratulations again to him.
Yeah, just adding on to his legacy. Did a lot of pretty remarkable stuff on the field, and he was putting in some work off the field too.
Yeah, when we get to NFL draft time, we will hear some of his teammates, at least one of his teammates, it seems very clearly.
It's looking like two, bro.
In the first round.
Two in the first round right now.
Probably two.
Mm-hmm. Pretty incredible. Yeah, good on Armand Membu for the opportunity. It seems like he's going to have to be right there in day one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would say that I would personally hope to see names Membu and Burden called on day one at the NFL draft, which is as good of an advertisement for your program as you can have anywhere when it comes to the ultimate goal for a lot of individuals, which is to play the game professionally. So we'll see how that tracks as we go throughout time. Softball will be starting basically imminently. The softball team was recently out, still maybe a little bit soggy on their infield, so with the nice weather, I saw them out at Taylor Stadium taking a couple of infield pop flies. They will be basically, they're under a week to go until they get started. At the time that we record this, it's basically a week to go time. So we'll see how things go weekend one in Clearwater, and then it's been announced that weekend two in Clearwater, they get the whole four-letter network treatment with, the A crew, Beth Mowens, who's so great calling softball nationally. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be in Clearwater to follow them too. That'd be a long shout for me from Puerto Rico to
be a little
Clearwater,
farther
Florida.
south, yeah.
So, yeah, I think I'll be in a little bit different place for that. But we're really looking forward to seeing what this program has to build on its momentum once again. And, oh, by the way, that first weekend, look out for those Duke Blue Devils. Is that going to be interesting or what?
How good was that super regional series here? I know Mizzou came up just a little bit short in the decisive game there with the trip to the College World Series on the line, but just some terrific games played here at Mizzou Softball Stadium. And Coach Anderson said on the most recent edition of the men's version of Tiger Talk, which, again, you can go back and catch that. She was at the end of the show if you want to get a little bit of a preview on softball before the season starts. But she said that, the goal is the same, to put yourself in a position to host an NCAA tournament regional and then, try to parlay that home field advantage ultimately to a Women's College World Series trip. They were able to get right on the doorstep last year and going to have to reload a little bit. There's going to be some younger names that are going to have to step up and contribute, but still the chance is there, and Coach Anderson has set the standard that this is a program capable of reloading.
I am making my bold prediction right now. This will be my prediction for the entire spring sports season. Abby Hay is going to hit over 10 home runs this season.
She was pretty darn salty right off the bat. Basically stepped off the bus from high school, whatever, and you're playing a lot of baseball, and didn't even really play a lot of softball. So now she's locked in, presumably, on hitting softballs instead of baseballs. I mean, yeah, that's a good prediction.
I don't know anything else necessarily in terms of being confident enough to say it about this team. I feel super confident that she has a double-digit home run season coming this year for Missouri. Health willing for everybody, but I'm really excited to see what it looks like. You should be too. And for Mizzou Baseball, which starts a week later again on Valentine's Day in Puerto Rico, I will take my romantic vacation with myself and Mizzou Baseball and do a little bit of work too when we head down there to the island. And in the meantime, we will keep you up to date on everything going on around Mizzou Athletics in events like these.
And events like Mizzou Wrestling. Shout out to their top 25 win over West Virginia, 22-16 this past Saturday at Mizzou Arena. They've got a swing through the Sooner State. They've got number 22 Oklahoma in Norman on Saturday, number 3 Oklahoma State in Stillwater on Sunday. Still not fully healthy, but we'll certainly wish them the best and hope they can get closer to full strength with a challenging Big 12 gauntlet coming up for them. Swim and dive is at the Air Force Diving Invite right now for the rest of the week, and then women's tennis is back and hosting SLU on Saturday. Men's golf starts the 2025 portion of its schedule early next week. It's the National Invitational Tournament. They will be in Tucson starting on Monday.
On Monday already. I got a little bit caught out by that. Because I'm really looking forward to it. But I got caught out by that. I'm looking forward to seeing Coach Milliken's team as we go throughout the course of the spring. And by the way, Missouri over West Virginia was no fluke in wrestling, and it was much needed in the sport of wrestling as well. And we saw some Tigers, again, get a couple of what some people might call upsets over the course, or at least compete to the level of doing that. So they got the job done. They got some bonus points. Cade Moore was just a monster. Cade Moore should be ranked pretty soon, in my opinion, after winning by fall over Tommy Maddox. So best to the wrestling team as they go through the state of Oklahoma. They will have their opportunity because of this monster schedule to make their hay and improve their ranking significantly as we go into March. So let's see it happen.
Felt like a program win. It's one of those where, Mizzou, Tiger style, they got the tradition. They're not used to losing duels, and even though you're not 100%, the standard is the standard, and you pick up a top 25 win. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it will be good stuff as we go forward. There's so much stuff I can't even keep track of it, because Brad Trinago is more organized than I am and writes all of this stuff on a napkin before we start. That's why we can take care of things for you. Hey, big thanks to Andrew Bristow, doing a great job producing for us, as always, on the podcast, and thanks to Brock Lucas as well. That first pitch celebration, if you're listening to this on Thursday or Friday, you can go to mutigers.com, find baseball, still find yourself some tickets for that first pitch celebration at the Atrium in downtown Columbia. It's going to be a great time. I would expect you would see me there in some form or fashion. Brad Trinago, I know that you are going to be absolutely ready to go as well. You will be dressed in your Truman outfit.
Yes, absolutely. So I won't be talking quite as much because, again, the standard is the standard. And
I'm surprised you made it through here. I'm surprised you have a voice left.
Yep, I've been loading up on the honey-infused beverages, and I'll be ready to go for Texas on Thursday night, Tennessee on Sunday, and who knows what else.
You know what else is a honey-infused beverage? Mead.
I'll look into that. It was not mead.
That's what he was drinking after the celebration Monday. He had to dip into a little bit of the celebratory mead.
Cheers.
For Viking Brad Trinago.
Yeah. Skol, friend.
I'm Matt
Another
Michaels.
podcast done.
We ended it strangely, as we always do. Make sure you stick with us next week here on another Inside Mizzou Athletics podcast.